Hello, it's 10 a.m. on Friday, the 27th of March. You're tuned into our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks for joining us on what is a warm spring morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at the headlines. Korea says it's seeking to join the China-backed Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank as a founding member, despite U.S. opposition to the new multinational lender. With speculation refusing to go away about the possible deployment of a U.S. missile defense system to the Korean peninsula, the top military chiefs from South Korea and the U.S. are sitting down for talks on bilateral security issues. Plus, investigators say the co-pilot of the plane that smashed into the French Alps, named as Andreas Lubitz, appears to have crashed the Germanwings Airbus A320 on purpose. Our top story this morning: after weeks and weeks of will it or won't it, Korea has finally announced that it intends to join a new China-led regional development bank as a founding member. The country's participation is likely to open up immense business opportunities for local companies in infrastructure building projects while strengthening economic ties with China. Our Hwang Jie reports.
The South Korean government says it will join the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank that aims to provide regional economies with the necessary funds for large-scale development projects. The decision is forecast to largely benefit local companies by allowing them to take part in lucrative road and bridge building projects.
In the Asian region, there will be huge demand for these kind of building projects, for example, in the construction, electricity and telecommunication sectors. Joining the AIIB will open up more opportunities for Korean companies.
While membership of the AIIB is also expected to enhance South Korea's economic ties with China, many agree it will help Seoul by providing massive amount of funds critical to develop North Korea in case of unification.
South Korea could take the lead in developing the Northeast Asian region, including North Korea, by participating in the AIIB.
Given that this announcement only marks the beginning of this process, eyes are focused on how South Korea can secure voting rights that will decide its role in the bank. Participants have largely agreed that voting rights will be proportional to contributions made. Among the Asian nations that have agreed to join, South Korea has the third largest economy by size after China and India. Once South Korea is confirmed as a founding member and signs up around June this year, the National Assembly is expected to swiftly ratify the move. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Now, the top U.S. military officer will hold security-related talks with his South Korean counterpart in Seoul within the next hour or so. General Martin Dempsey's trip comes amid the heated controversy over the possible deployment of the THAAD missile defense system to South Korea. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
Will the top U.S. military officer address the possible deployment of a controversial U.S. missile defense system in South Korea during his visit to Seoul? U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Martin Dempsey and his counterpart Choi Yoon-hee will meet on Friday to discuss pending issues, such as responding to North Korean threats. The South Korean military stressed that the deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Battery, also known as THAAD, is not on the agenda. Although the two allies say there have been no formal discussions, Washington has been pushing the issue, saying THAAD will deter North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. Seoul is more cautious, with its neighbors, namely China and Russia, voicing their opposition. North Korea has expressed anger about the proposed defense system, with its foreign ministry warning that the deployment will turn the region into a theater of fierce scramble. In a statement carried by North Korean state media on Thursday, the ministry called it Washington's preparation for a preemptive strike at the north and an attempt to contain China and Russia. Even if the issue of THAAD doesn't come up this time, pundits say speculation will resurface when U.S. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter visits South Korea early next month. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
And as a follow-up to that report, visiting U.S. Army Chief Martin Dempsey also met with President Park Geun-hye at her office on Thursday. And the South Korean leader told him that winning by deterrence is the best kind of victory, after conferring Dempsey the Order of National Security Merit's highest award. The president said the Seoul-Washington alliance is the best of its kind in the world and is expanding to address global concerns. Dempsey responded by saying that it will also play a vital role in unification matters on the Korean peninsula. He also delivered regards from US President Barack Obama and expressed anticipation for the Korean president's visit to Washington in the near future. North Korea claims to have arrested 2 South Korean spies who it says worked for Seoul's National Intelligence Service from the Chinese border city of Dandong. The North state-run Korean Central News Agency reported late Thursday that the men, identified as Kim Guk-gi and Che Chun-gil, are being held on charges related to terrorism and bringing in large quantities of counterfeit money. It added that Che was arrested last December, while Kim was captured in Pyongyang last September. The South's Unification Ministry says it's looking into the claims. Now, it has emerged that an unidentified man tried to set fire to the Korean Cultural Center in Tokyo on Wednesday night. Fortunately, no one was hurt and the property wasn't damaged except for a stone wall near the side entrance, which was blackened by the flames. As you can see, the CCTV footage shows the unidentified man pouring lighter fluid on the wall and setting fire to it. The motive for this crime remains unknown, but the Korean government has asked for extra protection measures for the building and for the case to be investigated promptly. Korea's latest satellite is now successfully orbiting the Earth. Officials say the satellite made its first contact with Korea's ground station a few hours after it was launched from Russia. Now, this new satellite will help enable 24-hour monitoring of the Earth's surface, regardless of the weather conditions down here on Earth. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
The Korea Aerospace Research Institute confirmed that the Korea Multipurpose Satellite 3A established radio contact with Korea's ground station Thursday afternoon. It made 2 previous radio communications and all of its solar panels have been deployed to generate power. The satellite, also known as ARIRANG 3A, was launched just past 7 a.m. Korea time from Russia's Yasny launch base. It was sent into space on the Deneb, a Russian launch vehicle converted from a Soviet-era intercontinental ballistic missile. The launch comes as Korea is aiming to make inroads into the global space industry. Satellite development around the world is ramping up, and Korea plans to develop its own launch vehicle for testing by 2019. Korean officials hope the ARIRANG 3A will boost the country's ability to monitor the Earth's surface and complement the nation's 3 other multi-purpose satellites currently in space.
Until now, satellite development was led by the government, but this time private companies put a lot of effort into the making of the ARIRANG 3A. We see this as a big opportunity for Korea to develop further in this area.
The 1,100-ton satellite has the most powerful optical lens of any Korean satellite yet. It will be able to provide clear images of any object larger than 50 centimeters in diameter on the Earth's surface. It's also equipped with an infrared sensor that can monitor volcanic movements or forest fires. The ARIRANG 3A will circle the Earth 15 times a day for the next 4 years. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye has sanctioned a controversial anti-corruption bill. With the president's approval, the law will be proclaimed on this Friday and enforced starting September 2016 after an 18-month grace period. Under this bill, public servants, members of the media and private education workers will face criminal punishment if they or their spouses are found to have accepted $900 or more in money or gifts from a person, regardless of whether it was in exchange for favors or work-related. Now, critics of the bill say it could violate a person's constitutional rights and infringe on freedom of the press and rights to equality. Korea's free trade deal with the European Union has vastly improved the economic bloc's trade balance with Korea. An EU report shows that its exports to Korea jumped by 35% entering the 3rd year of the FTA from the year before the deal took effect. Now, over the same period, Korea's exports to the EU basically remained the same. As a result, the EU's trade balance with Korea flipped from an $8.2 billion deficit pre-FTA to a $3.8 billion surplus. The Korea-EU Free Trade Agreement went into effect in July 2011. Now, latest figures show that 3 out of 5 foreigners who gained South Korean citizenship, recently at least, are Chinese. According to the Ministry of Justice, over 2,800 foreigners were naturalized in just the first 2 months of this year alone. China ranked first with 1,700, but the vast majority of those Chinese are actually ethnic Koreans. Second and third on the list were those people from Vietnam and the Philippines, with most of the immigrants from Southeast Asia obtaining citizenship through marriage. Meanwhile, 2,600 Koreans were naturalized in other countries during the same period, with more than half of them becoming American citizens. A critical turn in the investigation into what caused Germanwings Flight 9525 to smash into a remote part of the French Alps on Tuesday, killing all 150 people on board. We'll connect to Eunice Kim at the News Centre for more on this and the rest of the global headlines. So, Eunice, there are reports now that the co-pilot, considered a possible culprit, may have reprogrammed the autopilot to crash the plane on purpose.
That's right, Mark. This is according to analysis done by a flight tracking service, Flight Radar 24. It suggested that whoever was at the controls had dialed in a descent from its cruising altitude of 38,000 feet to 96 feet, which is the lowest level. The plane ultimately hit the mountainside at 6,000 feet. This after a French prosecutor had said the co-pilot deliberately drove the aircraft into the Alps.
The most plausible, realistic interpretation, as far as we are concerned, is that the co-pilot, through voluntary abstention, refused to open the door of the cabin for the captain, and then pressed a button which caused the aircraft to lose altitude.
There you heard Mr. Robin confirming earlier reports saying the more experienced pilot was locked out of the cockpit, citing sound retrieved from the cockpit recorder. He said that there were no known ties to terrorism or extremists, adding that the passengers likely were unaware of the impending danger until the last moments of the rapid 8-minute descent when screams were heard in the audio recording. Now, Lufthansa, the parent company of Germanwings, has since identified the 27-year-old German co-pilot as Andreas Lubitz. Police in Germany have searched his home as well as the home of his parents for clues to a possible intent. Lufthansa's CEO said Lubitz had taken a break from training for several months 6 years ago and was reinstated after his suitability was reestablished. Meanwhile, recovery operations continue in search of bodies and the second black box, the flight data recorder. Mark.
Yes, Eunice, as hard as it is to comprehend, it's beginning to look as though it was a deliberate act, that plane crash. Now, turning our focus to the United States now, it says Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will address both houses of U.S. Congress when he visits Washington late next month.
That's right. U.S. Speaker John Boehner announced the invitation, and it would be a note of history as well, since Prime Minister Abe would be the first Japanese leader to be given this rare platform. Boehner said Abe's speech will give Americans an opportunity to hear ways to expand economic and security cooperation from one of its closest allies. U.S. officials are hoping to see a breakthrough in trade talks with Japan, in particular in relation to the massive Trans-Pacific Partnership Pact. Now, Abe will visit the U.S. from April 26th through the 2nd of May, and he is set to attend a formal state dinner at the White House one day before his congressional address. While foreign leaders addressing both houses of Congress is usually a rare event, Abe will already be the third to do so this year, following Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, both of whom addressed Congress this month. Mark.
Well, Eunice, Korea will surely be watching very carefully to hear what Abe says to Congress next month. Thank you very much, as always, Eunice, for your reports, and we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
Now it's East meets West at the National Changguk Company of Korea. The traditional Korean opera company is staging a classic German play as its first performance of the year. Im Yoon-hee has the story.
There is no love like a mother's love. Even though this mother adopted this abandoned child, can she still love him like her own? The tender motherly voice that cries for him is real. The tears that she sheds for her child are real as well. But with one arm in the birth mother's hand and the other arm in the adoptive mother's hand, what determines a true mother's love? The Caucasian Chalk Circle is a German play written by Bertolt Brecht. It's a play about a mother's love. But it also echoes an age-old parable with lessons that Korean-Japanese director Chung Ui-shin, along with the National Changguk Company of Korea, aims to share in the form of Korea's traditional pansori.
Pansori is a unique form of music. I have experience with operas and plays, which are different. And although this is my first time with pansori, I realized that the movement and voice had to be in rhythm. This piece by Brecht has meaningful content about the war, and interestingly, it melts perfectly into pansori form. There's a lot of emotional capacity to pansori, and a chance to show a truly sorrowful voice.
But the addition of pansori to this performance also means a special stage. There are 3 angles to the stage, drawing the audience into the performers and their performance, an intimate setting familiar to pansori. Another element of pansori also carried over is the presence of a lead singer, who acts as a narrator throughout the story. In this version of the Caucasian Chalk Circle, the role has been given to the judge, a figure who continually communicates with other actors and the audience, a traditional yet modern approach to this performance. The music is live, making use of an array of different instruments from all different cultures. The result is a clash of sounds, but at the same time, the sounds work together, leading to heightened emotions.
The instruments you'll see here are instruments from a band, like a guitar, bass, piano, but there are also classical music instruments, 국악 instruments like kayagums, and even electronic instruments involved. The purpose of mixing all these sounds is to appeal to the modern generation, but also to create the needed tension on the stage. However, in the center of it all, the voice of pansori will be heard loud and clear.
A mother's love is supposed to be the most unconditional, sacrificial type of love found in humanity. But who decides who that mother is? This circular ring, within this chalk circle, will determine a mother's true love. Im Yoon-hee, ARIRANG News.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the 2015 KBO League, which is set for its opening day tomorrow. And if you haven't noticed, the KBO is now being called the KBO League. And of course, some of the other changes in the league include the addition of a 10th KBO League team, making it the first time that the league will see 10 teams. And with the addition of another team comes the addition of games, as the number of games this season will increase from 128 to 144. And of course, once the first pitch is thrown out, the big question remains, will these Samsung Lions win their 5th straight championship, or will the 9 other teams stop that from happening? Now, before you can check out the opening weekend of the 2015 KBO League season, the other big match set for later tonight is the Korea-Uzbekistan match, as the national football team is set for a repeat of the 2015 Asian Cup quarterfinals. Now, Korea, who defeated Uzbekistan during the Asian Cup quarterfinals, will go into the match with a record of 9 wins, 2 draws, and just a single loss against her opponents. But with manager Uli Stilke choosing a couple of new faces in Lee Jae-sung and Kim Eun-sun, the big question is, are they up for the challenge? As the 61-year-old head coach is expected to try out different strategies during the match. Meanwhile, the match will kick off at the Daejeon World Cup Stadium at 8 p.m. Now, one of the biggest controversy here in Korea was the doping scandal of Park Tae-hwan, which led to the former Olympic champion getting slapped with an 18-month ban by FINA. But throughout this whole time, we haven't heard what he had to say regarding the issue. Well, that's all going to change now, as he's set to have a press conference later today at 3 p.m. to talk about his side of the story. And with the chief of Korean Swimming Federation, Lee Gi-heung, stating earlier that he should apologize first, the Marine boy's apology is expected at the presser as well. The 26-year-old is still being considered for a 3-year ban by the Korean Olympic Committee, although it's expected that he will receive a more lenient punishment. Well, a big game in the round of 4 KBO playoff series between the defending champions Ulsan Mobis Phoebus and the Changwon LG Sakers tipped off last night as the two teams went into a must-win Game 5 in Ulsan. Now, in the first quarter, LG looking for the big upset here, capitalize on Mobis' early turnovers as they take a slim 18-17 lead. But in the second quarter, Mobis shuts down the LG offense, outscoring their opponents 18-8 to take a 35-26 lead going into halftime. And despite Kim Si-dae's game-high 22 points, Mobis never looks back in this game as they take Game 5 78-67 as they make their 3rd straight trip to the championship series and a record 9th overall. And speaking of championship series, the V-League is all set for an exciting championship series themselves as 4 teams seek the title as the V-League champions. Now, first off, over in the Women's Championship Series, which begins later tonight, will be between the 2012-2013 champions IBK Altos, who will square off against the Korea Expressway team, who seek their first championship title in a best-of-5 series. And while that matchup can go either way, the 8-time champions Samsung Hwajae Bluefangs in the men's league are the heavy favorites going into the championship series against OK Savings Bank, as Robert Landy Simone looked to pull off a huge upset against his Cuban rival, Leo Martinez. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
It will be warmer today. The high in Seoul will climb up to higher than yesterday, reaching to upper teens, and the southern provinces will see highs getting up to the 20s. But we've been experiencing wide temperature fluctuations these days, so be sure to dress accordingly. April is just around the corner, and spring flowers have finally started to bloom in the capital area. So other than dryness, we'll have clean air to breathe in under mostly sunny skies, and a whole nation will continue to enjoy those beautiful spring conditions today. On that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The single-digit morning low here in Seoul will jump up to 17, and Daegu and Gwangju will rise to 21-20, and Busan will peak at 16 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. Jeju and Dokdo will see a high of 16, while Daejeon tops out at 18. We have light rain in the forecast from tomorrow night at about 9 p.m. in Seoul and the surrounding areas, and it's likely to linger till Sunday early morning, but the precipitation will be less than 5 millimeters. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it for now. Have a great day and a wonderful weekend. Thanks ever so much for watching as well. I'm Mark Broome, and I'll be back with Odds and Dew at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.